everyone, welcome to Gilbhub TV. How often have you had a file sent to you with a title like the title of this video? Title Final version 2.1. And how often have you been working on a piece of work with a colleague or maybe a client only to get halfway through a round of feedback and realise that you're both working on two completely different versions of the same piece of work? It can be massively confusing. And as a copywriter, I tend to put a lot of my focus on the copy that goes into the documents. But what actually is really important for anyone, whether you're a writer or not, is the copy that you give the file name. So the actual file name that you're exchanging between yourself and your colleagues or yourself and your clients. So to avoid these kinds of problems, all you have to do is come up with a naming convention for your files and be consistent with them. And of course, you don't have control over how the files come back to you from your client or your colleagues, but if you make sure that every time you send out a new version or a new file to someone, you're using your same naming convention, then you're going to save yourself a lot of bother and a lot of aggro further down the line. Now, people have all different types of naming conventions. Some people like to do version 1, version 2, version 3. Some people do version 1.1, version 1.2, version 1.3. Some people use the date. Some people use their initials. There's all kinds of different ways you can do it. But the thing is, the key thing is to be consistent. So don't get swayed into using other people's ones halfway through a project. If you start a project, make sure that you use for your files the same naming convention from start to finish. If you want to change up how you do things, you can change it for the next project. But from the minute you get brief to the minute it gets signed off, make sure that you are using your naming convention consistently. A pet peeve of mine is the word final in titles, and you can see I'm kind of taking the mick out of it a little bit with the title of this video, because you don't actually know that something is final until it's final, and at that point you're not really sending versions back and forth anymore. It's only really final when you're finished. And you know that if you put the word final on a document, it's going to have changes sent back to it. That's just the law of how it works. And also, if you put final in capital letters, that doesn't make it any better. That's why you see so many documents that have final getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then still version 3 on the end of it. So don't use the word final because it's pointless and it just gets confusing. So if you're looking for a naming convention to use, you're more than welcome to use the one that I do. And what I do is I put the title, first of all, whatever that might be. It might be the client's name and then website copy, or the client's name and then email campaign, just something relevant that describes the piece of work. And then I put an underscore, the word draft in capital letters to show that it's not the final thing if anyone comes across it who's out of the loop. And then another underscore and today's date. And I put the date that I send the piece of work. So if I start the work on a Monday but I don't send it to the Wednesday, I put Wednesday's date on the file. That way it matches up with the date that's on the email when I sent it, and it's just really easy to look back over different records and match things up. Another note is that I don't put slashes or dots or anything in the date. I literally just put the numbers. So for today it would be 25/01/16 for the 25th of January 2016. Now if I happen to send off 2 versions in one day, I will then put a underscore version 2 or version 3 or version 4 or whatever it might be on the end. And it tends to be that people need a bit of time to do feedback and changes and reviews and stuff, so I don't usually do more than 2 or 3 versions in a day. So by the time we get to the next version, it's a new date, so that's a new file name. Now sometimes my clients will send a document back and it will have my naming convention followed by a bit of their naming convention. So it might have mine and then their initials on the end, or another form of the date, or another version or something like that. And if that happens, I tend to just take it, save it, copy it into a new version and put my naming convention on it again for when I send it back. Or if it's the next day, obviously I would change the date, but it would be back to my naming convention when it goes back out to them. And I keep doing that so that everything in my file system is consistent. Now, obviously it depends on what you're doing with your client. You might want to have a conversation with them about how you're going to use naming conventions. Some people really don't mind, they don't care. Some people really do care and prefer things to make sense at their end as well, which is understandable. So just have that conversation as and when you need to, and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what convention you use, so long as it makes sense to you and it makes sense to them, and you're both on the same page about what you're talking about and what you're looking at. I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like any more tips on working with clients, working for yourself, working as a self-employed person or a freelancer, then let me know. If you've got any questions about copywriting or anything that you'd like me to make a video on around that kind of area, then please leave me a comment below or send me a tweet. You can also visit my website, which is www.gilbhub.com, and if you want to tweet me, it's @HannahGilb. Thanks for watching.